Today on Food for Thought, we're taking mealtime outside. I'll show you some of my favorite portable dishes, perfect for lunches, or better yet, picnics. First, I'm making pork belly sandwiches with a tangy carrot apple slaw right on top. Then, for dessert, I'm making a nectarine crostata. And to round it out, I'm making a citrus fennel slaw, perfect for a picnic. I love picnics. With just a blanket and a great packed lunch, you can turn an ordinary meal into a really relaxing outing. What makes a perfect picnic? Well, in my book, it's a sandwich, a few sides, and a rustic dessert. First, I'm making pork belly sandwiches with a tangy carrot apple slaw right on top. Pork belly is just the entire piece of meat that bacon comes from. So this is it in its uncooked form, and you can see that it is just a large slab. And when you slow cook it, it allows all of those delicious meaty flavors to really come through, and it's super tender. My pork belly has been curing overnight in a mixture of white sugar, brown sugar, pepper, and salt. And you can see it shrunk down a little bit and gave out a little bit of water. That's the sugar and salt working. It gives out this really delicious, beautiful, meaty flavors. This is ready to go in the oven, so I'm gonna blot it with paper towels just to make sure I get a really crisp skin. And then I'm gonna put it in a very hot oven, 450 degrees, and what that's gonna do is it's gonna make the skin super crisp and really golden brown. After an hour, I'm going to turn the oven down to 250 degrees and cook it for another hour. What I'm hoping to do is to cook off most of the fat, and I want it to be really tender. I don't want it falling apart, but it needs to have that lovely sort of meaty texture. This looks fantastic. It's so golden brown. I'm going to let it cool down to the touch, then wrap it in plastic wrap and let it chill in the fridge. Now, I'm going to get started on my apple carrot slaw that goes on top of the sandwiches. Apples and pork are a very natural combination. It's just that sweetness that goes perfectly with pork. And so this little slaw is kind of a twist on that combination. First, I'm going to peel and grate my carrots. And I am using the largest grate setting because I want to have really good pieces of carrot. Well, that looks like enough. So I'm going to set it in my bowl and get started on my apples. And I am using Granny Smith. They're super tart, and it's a really nice counterbalance to the fattiness of the pork. Well, now I'm gonna start grating it. And you don't have to pre-slice or anything, just go right in there. Well, that looks like about a cup. So the apple goes straight into the bowl with the carrots. And then I'm going to add my raisins, and I've plumped these in some warm water and then drained them off. And I like to plump my raisins because it sort of takes away some of that chewiness, and I want it to just be really soft and tender. Next, I'm going to chop my parsley, and there's two types you can usually find in a market: Italian flat leaf and curly. I like to use Italian flat leaf because it has a much brighter, stronger flavor. So I'm going to chop my parsley, and I'm going to do this pretty roughly. I don't want any super fine pieces. I can keep it pretty big. Well, I just need about 3 tablespoons, so this looks good. In it goes. All right. I'm going to make my dressing now, and it's super simple. All it is some rice wine vinegar, whole grain mustard, olive oil, and salt and pepper. I'm using a container because I like to shake my dressings together. It's no muss, no fuss, and super simple. So first, the rice wine vinegar, and then the whole grain mustard. Next, I'm gonna measure out 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And then a pinch of salt. I might want to add more later, but starting with a pinch. And then a little bit of pepper. All right. It's nice and sealed. I I do not want vinaigrette all over my face. So I'm just gonna shake this. And it's together, it's done. That took 5 seconds. I'm gonna pour most of this just right on top. Might add a little bit just at the end in case it needs a little more moisture. And then I'm just gonna mix the whole thing together. Well, that is sufficiently mixed, everything's really nicely integrated. And I'm gonna give it a taste. I wanna get a little bit of everything. Oh, that's really nice. The vinaigrette is perfect. I am ready to build some sandwiches, and I have my pork belly that has been chilling in the fridge so it's nice and cold, and that means it's gonna be really easy to slice. If you don't care about looks though, you can slice it straight out of the oven. But first, I need to get to my baguette. I wanna make about 3 to 4 sandwiches out of this one baguette. Okay. And I'm traveling with this sandwich, so that means I'm not eating it right away. And one of the biggest bummers of having a picnic is soggy bread on your sandwich. No one likes it, so to make sure that doesn't happen, I'm going to put my arugula on both sides of the sandwich. Time to slice up my pork belly. And a serrated knife makes this a lot easier. It goes right through. And this is a very, very rich meat, so I'm going to not use a ton on the sandwiches. It's easiest to slice about 1/4 inch slices. You don't want to do anything thinner than that, otherwise you'll kind of tear into it and it'll be a bit of a mess. So I'm just gonna pop that right on the bottom. Well, my sandwich is almost complete. I just need to add the finishing touch, which is my carrot slaw. So I'm just gonna pile that right on top. And you want as much slaw as there is pork belly. It's meant to counterbalance the whole thing. So I'm just gonna take this top, put it on my bottom kind of carefully, and press it down. That is a perfect picnic sandwich. When we come back, I'm getting started on a rustic nectarine pastry, another great traveler to our picnic. Today, we're making a meal perfect for a picnic. And what's a picnic without a delicious dessert? I'm going to show you a simple and rustic crostata filled with a vanilla almond cream and nectarines. This delicious crostata is great anytime, but I'm making it today because it travels really well. And the first step is a really simple pie dough that you can make right in the food processor. I already have my flour in, so now I'm gonna add my butter, sugar, and a little bit of salt. And my butter is ice cold. It's really important to use super cold ingredients when you're making a pie dough because when the butter melts, you want it to give off that water and steam so you get a very tender crust. Next, I'm gonna add my sugar, and it's just a little bit, just adds a little bit of flavor. And then a good amount of salt. So I'm just gonna pulse this gently. The idea here is I wanna break down my butter until it's about the size of a pea. I don't want it any smaller. All right, next, I'm just gonna drizzle in a little bit of water while I pulse. I just want to barely make it come together as a dough. Okay, that is dough. And you can see that it's not one giant lump of dough, it's just kind of shaggy looking. And this is enough dough to make a full pie, which means a top and a bottom. And for a crostata, which is just a free-form single pie, I only need 1/2 of this recipe. So the other half can either be made to make an extra crostata, or I can just stick it in my freezer and use it when I need it. So I'm just gonna slice this in half just to make it easier to measure a true half of this recipe. I'm just gonna loosely form this into a ball because the heat from my hands will melt the butter, so I wanna work very quickly. Now, I'm gonna wrap each of them in some plastic wrap and press it down. So I'm just gonna chill these in the fridge for about 30 minutes and then I can form them into my crust. While my dough is chilling in the fridge, I'm gonna get started on my other filling. So first up is my almond cream, and this is very delicious. First, I'm gonna start with my almonds. And you can see I did not bother to clean out my food processor because it's all basically the same ingredients, just butter, flour, sugar, that kind of thing. Next, my brown sugar. And I love the flavor of brown sugar. It adds just a really nice depth that goes great with the almonds. And then just a tiny bit of flour. This kind of binds everything together. And now I'm going to pulse it until the almond sort of falls apart and becomes like granules, grains, that kind of thing. All right, that looks pretty good. I mean, even though this is technically an almond cream, I want to still be able to taste and feel the almonds. They add a really nice bite and a little bit of texture to this crostata. Next, I'm adding my butter. I'll just go straight in. I'm going to mix it together until it forms sort of a paste. Now, I'm gonna add 1 egg at a time. So add an egg, let it come together, and then add your other eggs. Beautiful, that looks great. And last, I'm going to measure out my vanilla. So a whole tablespoon, and then pulse. My almond cream is done, and it smells amazing. Vanilla always smells amazing though. So I'm gonna pour this out, and then I'm gonna finish up the rest of my crostata. I'm gonna get started on my fruit, and I have these beautiful, super ripe nectarines. They smell amazing. So I'm just gonna be slicing these into sort of 1/8 and 1/10. You want the slices to be big enough that you get a good bite, but not giant chunks. And because I'm only making 1 crostata right now, I'm only gonna use half of the nectarines and half of the ingredients I'm using to marinate them. That's the last of my nectarines. So now I'm just gonna add some ingredients to marinate them. First, I have brown sugar, a little bit of white sugar. I love the combination of brown and white sugar. It just creates a really lovely balance. And next, this is a totally optional ingredient. It's chambord, and you can use this, which is a raspberry liqueur, any fruit liqueur, or even a brandy. It adds a really interesting sort of dark, rich note that goes amazing with the nectarines and the almonds. So I'm gonna add half of this. 1 more ingredient, butter. Just adding this to mix in because it's going to melt and kind of stew with the nectarines as the crostata cooks. And we'll just mix this all together. These are all mixed up. I'm just gonna let these sit and marinate while I get started on my crust. So my dough is right out of the fridge, and I'm ready to start putting this crostata together. So first up, I need to dust this whole thing with a little bit of flour. I don't want my dough to stick. So I'm gonna put my dough on and then sprinkle the top with a little bit of flour. And I want to roll this out into about a 14-inch disc. And the reason why it's so big is because I'm going to fold over the edges to hold everything in. Imagine a pie without the pie dish. Between each roll, I'm going to pivot my dough. And this just makes sure that everything sort of distributes evenly as I roll it out. This looks great. But before I build it, I'm actually gonna transfer this to my baking sheet, because if I build my entire crostata here, getting it onto that baking sheet is gonna be a little difficult. Now I can start putting it all together. So first, I'm going to start with my almond cream, and I'm gonna spoon a little bit in, just gonna bring it until the last inch around the edge. And remember, this is enough almond cream for 2 crostatas, so I'm only gonna use half. All right, that looks pretty good. I don't need it to be super thick. I just want a really nice coating over the whole thing. Next, spooning on my nectarines. And I don't want this to look too fussy. I'm just gonna start spooning them all on, sort of in a pile. So I'm just gonna sort of fuss with these a little bit just to make sure they're even on the crostata. All right, and now I'm gonna start folding up the edges all the way around, making the freeform pie. Well, that looks fabulous, but there's one last touch to make it look even better. I'm going to add an egg wash, and this is just an egg that I've beaten up. I have my pastry brush here, and I'm just going to very lightly coat it all around the edges. And lastly, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of extra sugar just around the edges. It adds a really nice texture and just looks beautiful after it's baked. Okay, just gonna pop this in a 400-degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes until it's golden brown. When we come back, we'll check on the crostata and I'll show you my take on coleslaw. It's a citrusy surprise. My citrus fennel coleslaw is the perfect refreshing side for a warm weather picnic. Everything here just has really crisp, bright flavors, and I love them when they're put together. Plus, it's really simple to make. To start, I'm going to cut up my oranges into supremes, and all that means is I'm cutting slices between the membranes. To get started, I'm just going to chop off the top and bottom of my oranges. Next, I'm going to slice off the pith, which is just the white part between the flesh of the orange and the skin. Well, this looks good and I'm ready to slice my supremes, and all I want is the sweet flesh inside. As you can see, it's just a perfect little orange slice. There's no membrane, which means there's nothing chewy getting between me and the orange. So I'm just gonna do this all the way around the orange until I'm done. My oranges are all sliced up. So now I'm gonna move on to my cabbage. I just have a quarter cabbage. This isn't a very cabbage heavy slaw. There's sort of equal amounts of everything here. So to shred this, all I'm gonna do is take my quarter and just slice it really thinly from tip to end. Okay. And so this goes straight in with the oranges. My next ingredient is fennel, and I love this ingredient. I stick it in so many different dishes. It's kind of strong, so I like to slice it super thin. So I'm busting out my mandolin for that. First off, I'm going to slice off the fronds, just the very tops. And now I'm going to slice it in half from top to bottom. That's it for my knife skills. I'm now going to enlist the mandolin to slice this paper thin. And a little bit of a warning, a mandolin is an open blade, so you have to be super duper careful when you use one. So I have my fennel, and I'm just gonna slide it right through. All right, my fennel is all sliced up. Now all I have to do is add all of my ingredients for the dressing. So to start, I have some sour cream, and this gives a really nice tang to the whole thing. And you can see it's just a tiny bit. It's just to kind of coat everything and give it a really creamy flavor. Next, I'm gonna add a little bit of lime juice, and this just adds a really nice kick. Plus it keeps all the vegetables really green. I don't want anything to oxidize or turn brown. Then, I'm gonna put my jalapeno right in. And if you don't like it spicy, you do not have to add jalapeno. And then some cilantro. I love cilantro in this kind of combination. Cilantro with lime in general is just sort of meant to happen. Then just a tablespoon of olive oil, just to kind of tie the whole thing together. And some salt and pepper. I want this really well seasoned. That looks great. I'm gonna mix the whole thing up until it has sort of an even consistency and everything's really well blended together. Well, this looks great. It's all mixed together. Let's give it a taste. I wanna make sure I get a little bit of everything. That is so tasty. It's just really refreshing. I love how all the ingredients come together. It's really bright, and the orange just gives this little hint of sweetness, and the jalapeno gives a little bit of heat. It's just perfect for a picnic. I love this. Well, this looks ready to chill in the fridge, and my crostata should be ready by now, so I'm gonna pull that out of the oven. Well, this looks amazing, and it smells even better. I'm going to let this cool down before I slice into it. And when we come back, I'm going to pack up all of the dishes I made today for a wonderful picnic in the park with a friend. I'm getting ready for a decadent picnic in the park with a friend. She'll never know how easy it was to put it all together. Now I'm gonna start putting away all of my different dishes. My crostata is now room temperature, so I can slice right into it. I love that tender crust. It slices so easily. And And that's ready to go. And one more slice because I'm packing for 2. That is all packed up. And there's one other element to my crostata, and I'm packing that separately because it could make it soggy. It's my creme fraiche topping. Creme fraiche is just French sour cream, and I added a little bit of lemon zest to give it a nice kick. Next, I'm going to pack up my coleslaw. And I have my sandwiches ready to go, so I'm just going to pack up my basket. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Food for Thought. Be sure to tune in next week for more delicious and inspiring recipes.